I didn't expect to be coming here to speak tonight, but I'm very pleased that I could. I really came to listen to our speakers tonight. But I am the president of the Aurora Historical Society, and I'd like to cordially invite you to our upcoming meetings with programs in January 27th, next week. We have a program on Welcome to Aurora Science Fiction Land. The wildest theme park that never was. Then in March, we too have Lee Whiteley who will come and speak on Cherry Creek Valley, history of the Cherry Creek Valley. So we'll get that in March. We got it in September, I guess, yes? And then finally in May, which may be of interest to you all, we have a Future of the Highline Canal. And I know the Highline, I guess I was told about 7 miles of the Highline goes through Highlands Ranch, or this part of it. So we meet at the Aurora History Museum in Aurora, and those are the last Tuesday, I should know this, right? Last Tuesday of the month, starting at 6 o'clock. Cordially invite you to come. We have great programs, and I'm looking forward to tonight's program. Thank you, David.
And now I'm going to turn it over to Todd. We do have one more speaker that he's going to introduce, but I'm going to get the slides moving while he does that.
David. Yes, thank you. I will introduce myself more in a minute, but before I do, I wanted to just introduce you to Brittany Castle, who is the curator for the Douglas County History Repository and also runs the Douglas County Historic Preservation Board. So.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming out tonight and supporting Todd's presentation. Just a couple of things I'd like to highlight that we've been working on. We have put up a wonderful exhibit display at the Park of Water, their new headquarters by the reservoir, so we invite you to come check it out. It's open during their business hours, so we have an old historic oil wagon on display, 3 display cases, and then this wonderful timeline of Douglas County history up. We are currently working on a small transportation exhibit that's going to be for the town of Parker in the old schoolhouse. They have a little museum room. I don't know if you guys have seen that, so we'll be doing a case in there. And then we have a virtual museum. We have over 25,000 artifacts in our virtual museum, and we also have showcases of some of our historic sites that aren't open to the public, so you can go and explore the history of some of our sites. And we will be adding more to that. The most recent showcase we have on there is actually on Franktown Cave, so you can learn about the history that was excavated in the 1940s. And then our repository, we have a team of volunteers that help us curate the artifacts, and all of those go into our virtual museum. We have over 200,000 artifacts in the repository currently, and that is growing as excavation and mitigation for expansion in the county. We have some artifacts from the repository in the back, and we have our business cards back there, so if you guys ever need to reach out to us, you have our information. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany. All right, I'm going to try to come back up here. Hopefully the podium will go all over the place. Well, first of all, I'd like to really, again, thank the Highlands Ranch Historical Society for inviting me tonight to give this presentation. Thank you all for coming out today on a holiday. We honor, of course, Martin Luther King, and all those who ventured all the way from Aurora out here today. So thank you all for coming out as well for this talk. It's really a pleasure. I used to work at History Colorado for over 30 years. I wear a lot of hats. I'm also the current chairperson for the Aurora Historic Preservation Commission. And I work pretty much exclusively with Douglas County and their repository, and I'm an interpretive planner, so that means I help with the exhibits and all of the outdoor historic signage. As Brittany mentioned, please come to our Parker Water exhibit. I think you'll really enjoy it. There's some really neat artifacts there. And we have more to come, so and do check out our virtual museum. And there's a QR code out there on the back table if you need to get the actual direct link to it. Well, before I begin, I just wanted to give you another kind of story, if you wouldn't mind indulging me for a minute. And that is, I want to tell this story because I think it's important for you to kind of understand how I got involved in all this stuff. My wife and I and our family have lived in Mission Viejo, Aurora for 32 years, or going on 32 years. And when we were, looking for a home to live, we had known Mission Viejo, both in Highlands Ranch, and I knew it, of course, for a long time. I was a fifth generation Coloradoan. My parents like to sometimes go look at new home development. So one of the things we went to was Mission Viejo, Aurora, and one of the things we also went to was Highlands Ranch. As a matter of fact, I have the original brochure for Highlands Ranch out there on the table, so if you want to take a look at that. But when we went to Mission Viejo, Aurora, there was a little bit of problems in the neighborhood. Things were going on. At that time, Mission Viejo company was still in existence, and I was pretty bold, and I just went and got a contact, and I talked to Mr. Joe Blake. And you may know Joe Blake. And Joe and I had some real good conversations, and he said, "Hey, we're going to go out to lunch." And I said, "Okay, great, let's go out to lunch." So he picked the restaurant, and I just thought it was going to be he and I. As it turned out, it was he, I, and all of the executives from the Mission Viejo company. They all came, and we all went to lunch at the Sushi Den restaurant over on Pearl Street in Denver. Very nice restaurant, by the way, and had a great lunch. And we talked about some things that were going on in our community. And afterwards, after we had kind of all finished our meal and were kind of on our way, one of the executives came up to me and she said, "Joe, this is from Joe, and we've all talked about this." And she said, "We want you, if you can, to be involved in your neighborhood." And I was like, well, that wasn't really what I wanted. I was hoping they'd help me. "No, you can do this." He said, "You can get involved in your neighborhood. You could be the president." I said, "Sure." I don't want to get involved in that. I was very reluctant to do so. And as a matter of fact, it took me about 3 or 4 years after that luncheon for me to actually get myself involved. But we had good conversations a lot of times with Joe, and I've got to know many of the people in the Mission Viejo company over the years. And they're all great people. And that's kind of where it all kind of started, was that. So anyway, to give you some background. So before I begin, though, I thought I would get you guys to think a little bit and to play a little game with me. So I like to call it Name That Neighborhood. And you can all participate. So if you'd like to just even shout it out, let me know what you think. I'm going to show you some pictures of some homes, and I want you to think, what neighborhood is this from? Okay? And there's only one clue I'm going to give you, and they were all built by the Mission Viejo company. Okay? Here's the first one. Where do you think this is from?
California.
Well, if you said Mission Viejo, Aurora, you are correct. That's Mission Viejo, Aurora. All right. How about this one? Highlands Ranch. Anybody else? My folks from Aurora, what do they think? It's Highlands Ranch. Looks an awful lot like some of the homes in Mission Viejo, Aurora, by the way. How about this one? This is fairly easy, I think. California, Mission Viejo, California. You got it. How about this one? California. You said Mission Viejo, Aurora. You were correct. How about this one? Mission Viejo, Aurora. This is one of the show homes, one of the original show homes. How about this one? Might be a giveaway with all the greenery. Mission Viejo, California. Okay. How about this one? It's not far from my house. What do you say? Aurora. Mission Viejo, Aurora. Although it looks a lot like some of the homes over there in the Northridge area, for sure. How about that one? Highlands Ranch. How about this one? this is a little tricky because it has a tiled roof on it, but that actually is Mission Viejo Aurora. How about this one? California. Okay, good. California. How about this one? Mission Viejo Aurora. You got it. Okay, now this one you get bonus points. If anybody here in this audience can tell me where this is from. It's a little bit trickier than any other ones. And it's my last one. Anybody? Any have any guesses? Okay, it's not California. It's not Colorado. This is another place that they built. It's called the Lakes in Tempe, Arizona. Okay. It's a community, I won't talk much about it, but it's a community about half the size of the Mission Viejo Aurora project. Okay, so what I hope that you will see today, that the Mission Viejo, California and Colorado, is really, it's the origins of the Highlands Ranch development. Without these two places, Highlands Ranch as we know it today would not exist. And I hope that you come away, as a takeaway from this, is that these planned communities have really unique characteristics. So I'm going to begin my story here talking about California and Mission Viejo. And so where what's in the name? Why the name Mission Viejo? Where is that? So people may not know, if you don't know California, there is a city of Mission Viejo in Orange County, California. And it would be remiss of me not to mention to you the original inhabitants of Mission Viejo. The original inhabitants of Mission Viejo before contact, European contact, was a very large number of people. Between 300 and 350,000 Native Americans lived where Mission Viejo once was, representing over 60 or 80 different cultural groups. Where Mission Viejo is today, that was the place where the Achuman Nation used to occupy. If you're ever over in the San Juan Mission San Juan Capistrano historic site, you can go visit a reconstruction of one of those homes that they used to live in. And there's also one at Laguna Beach State Park as well, if you're ever interested. I'm going to focus a little bit more on this map now, just to kind of give you a little bit better idea of where we're talking about. So if you're familiar at all with Orange County and Dana Point and that area of Orange County, and the current city of Mission Viejo City Hall is way up there at the north part of that. And then Mission San Juan Capistrano Historic Site is kind of located there on Interstate 5. And then sort of north east of there is what we call where the original Mission Viejo was, kind of historic. So the Mission Viejo story really begins with this, and there were Franciscan friars, of course, in California that established a number of missions, of course. And in 1775, they established, or tried to establish, the very first mission in this area. And it's known and documented through some of the original Spanish land grants, which you can see here dating from 1843. But it says the La Paz, and it also mentions Mission Viejo. The La Paz is a name that the company later used quite a bit. The Orange County Historical Society, back in 1963, went on an excursion trip to try to find those that actual old mission, and actually came up with a few artifacts in that expedition. And so they found some adobe and some tiles that they brought back from that group. Now, it's amazing, but things that were dating from the 70s. Sometimes they did survive up into the 1930s and to the 1960s. And actually, here's a photograph. It's very hard to see, but there's an old photo of an adobe structure, the Trubetco Adobe site from the 1930s. So it wasn't unheard of to find things like this, even in the 1960s in Orange County, California. So this area was actually part of the Spanish land grant. It was a 52,000 acre ranch called Rancho Mission Viejo. And after those friars tried to develop the first mission, Viejo mission, if you will, they had to abandon it after just 1 year. I guess there was something going on in another mission, so they left. And then they tried to come back, and it was unsuccessful. So they went further south, and that's where they established the Mission San Juan Capistrano, where it is today. And it was in 1776, so we're celebrating, of course, our sesquicentennial. They're also celebrating their anniversary this year as well. So it's an historic site. They have lots of historic events that go on. And one of the things I really want to point out to you, a couple things, is this wall of bells. So that was a really key element of this historic site. And the Mission Viejo Company really keyed in on that and tried to use it as part of their development. And the bell light also was used by the state of California to signify the Camino de Real, so the royal road that would link all of these missions together. You might see some of these bells signifying that as well. All right. So, we've got 52,000 acre Rancho Mission Viejo. In 1907, Mission Viejo was acquired by Richard O'Neill. He was an Irish cattleman. And in 1963, after a study was completed that indicated that a portion of the ranch could be developed for housing, they decided to sell about 10,000 acres for home sales. And soon the Mission Viejo Company was started by Donald Brennan, Phil J. Riley, and James Tepfer. They started the Mission Viejo Company. And so I wanted to mention the O'Neill family, who still own a lot of this ranch area today. Marguerite and Alicia are key names. They're sort of the matriarch women of this family. And you can find those same names both in Aurora, Colorado, as well as in California. So, and as a matter of fact, in Mission Viejo, California, there's a small park named Aurora Park in honor of our community, in our sister community in Colorado. As I mentioned, the O'Neill family continue to develop the ranch. They don't have the Mission Viejo Company still developing it, but they have other home builders that are continuing to build in Rancho Mission Viejo. And a key signifying part of all of what they've done, and I think both reflective here for Highlands Ranch and every place they've ever worked, a large number of acreage that's been preserved for conservation purposes. Over 20,000 acres have been preserved for open space purposes in Highlands, in California. Mentioned just one of the ranch codes, which I think kind of reflects well of both the ranch, the O'Neill family, and the Mission Viejo Company. This was something that they took to heart, and I think they still do. Take care of the land, neighbors help neighbors, be hospitable to strangers, take care of business, take pride in your work, make your handshake your bond, act with courage, have a kind word ready, ride for the brand, and have fun along the way. I think that's really reflective very well. And of course, this is a Western Ranch South Senate that also translates very well here in Colorado, I think, as well. All right, so in 1965, a master plan was developed for what would become eventually the city of Mission Viejo. And before they decided to develop this community, they sent their planners and engineers and architects over to Seville, Spain, to study the architecture elements that they could find in that environment over in Spain. And they brought back some of those ideas and incorporated them in California as well as in Colorado. In particular, the Barcelona entrance walls, which I'll have photos of here in a bit, as well as those mission bell lights, which you will also find in Aurora as well as in California and other places. So those were all part of it. And of course, they tried to connect everything to its history. Mission Viejo Company was extraordinarily respectful of the history in every place they ever worked at. And here, kind of ceremonially, everyone who bought a new home in Mission Viejo, California, they received a ceremonial chain of title that went all the way back to Spain. So you're going to have this real kind of connection to the history. And there you can see a picture of the O'Neill family at one of the parks that's named after them. All right. The community was a master plan, was stringently adhered to throughout the construction process. And there were really long lines of people from all over California that came to go visit this community as it was being developed. These are some early photos of the development when it was being first sold and first had show homes to go look at. This is the La Paz and Granada homes, which are a series of homes that were actually, those same names were duplicated for the Aurora project. And then shortly after the success that had started, the Mission Viejo Company was sold by the Philip Morris Tobacco Company. And of course, with that kind of funding, they thought this was a model that they could translate and transmit across other states. So that's when they started looking at places like Colorado. We'll get more to that in a minute. I also wanted to point out the really extraordinary lengths the Mission Viejo Company did do to build community. I don't know of any builder who went to the extent that they did. And so they really thought, how are we going to build a neighborhood and sell homes, but also how are we going to start a community? And I think a good indication of that is some of the clubs that they helped to start, either directly or indirectly. And you also, before I get into talking about those, here's one of the Barcelona entrance walls. You can see, this is from California, and then also one of the streetlights. You'll find both of those elements in Aurora. But above there is the Natadores Swim Club, which was started by the Mission Viejo Company. They realized that there was a need for having a place for young adults to swim. And, they actually owned and operated the Natadores Swim Club, which is the most successful swim club in the country. So we're talking Lagunas and many, every single Olympics, there has been a medalist who have either trained or been associated with the Natadores. I don't know of many others. And so there's many other groups that they helped to facilitate and create. The AYSO Soccer Youth Group, the Seniors Club, the Women's Club, baseball, Little League, golf, you name it, they were involved in a lot of those, either directly or indirectly, as they were building their communities. And I'm sure the same is here true for Highlands Ranch. Mission Viejo, California has a really proud history. A few years ago, I had the great pleasure of meeting Art Cook, who was, of course, an executive at Mission Viejo, and he gave myself and my family a really great tour. And what you see here is their Heritage House, which is an old sales office for the Mission Viejo Company. They have a lot of little kind of exhibits that are going on there. And then the Mission Viejo Library. There's two Mission Viejo libraries, one in California and one in Aurora. This is the one in California. We have a local history section there where you can find a lot of the history of Mission Viejo in there. Yes, I have an historic site. This happens to be a 3.5 to 5 million year old whale fossil in California. And it was a really successful community. This is from the 1980s publication that was really touting the development. And it was a really shown to be a really well-designed community. And they also, as I mentioned, developed the Lakes community in Tempe, Arizona. A lot of people know that as the development happened in California, they also decided to build their own man-made lake. Of course, Mission Viejo is landlocked. They don't have access directly to the ocean. So the planners in Mission Viejo said, we're going to bring the ocean to the people. So they built this large Lake Mission Viejo, and made everyone and all the little homeowners associations are a part of this larger Lake Mission Viejo Association. And I had a great tour of this. This is a place where people can come for events, of course, do some swimming, boating, whatever they would like. And of course, they have, summer events, concerts, and all that kind of thing. So really, really neat aspect of Mission Viejo. And I should also mention, also well-known, Mission Viejo is known for its participation in the 1984 Summer Olympics, where the bicycles used to come through for one of the events. So, enough about California. That sort of experience, and I could go on, but led to them looking at other places. So they came to Colorado. And I wanted to, like I did with California, talk about the original indigenous folks who used to live in Mission Viejo. Now, this isn't from Mission Viejo directly, but it's fairly close. This is a historic site, or a prehistoric site, pre-contact site, if you will, that is near what we call Seneca Dam, which is now known as Aurora Reservoir, which we recently landmarked. We hope to have some interpretive signage at some point there. But those, of course, were the original folks from Mission Viejo, Aurora. And there's over 48 different tribes that have affiliation to Colorado. These are some amazing artifacts that were also uncovered through archaeological excavations that are now at the Aurora History Museum. Getting into more European contact time period, I wanted to mention that this was also known as the town of Melvin. Now, when I'm saying the town of Melvin, it isn't a town that actually had like a main street, like Parker, Castle Rock, or anything like that. But it was a rural community, and the Aurora Historic Preservation Commission has actually landmarked a few of those vestiges of that old town site, that old town. One of which is the Melvin Lewis Cemetery, which is over off of Parker Road and Chambers, old historic cemetery. And another site is the Melvin School, which used to be near Cherry Creek Reservoir, but then was moved over to the campus of Smoky Hill High School. So those are two of our landmarks from the old town of Melvin. All right, so what if I can, I would like to bring in the voice of Jim Tuffer. So I did get involved, taking the advice of Joe Blake and his colleagues, and got involved to the Mission Viejo HOA. We were trying to celebrate our 35th anniversary at the time, and I really had a lot of good conversations with Jim. And he provided some real good insight, which I thought I would share with you tonight. I know you do a great job of highlighting all of the Mission Viejo history that's related to Highlands Ranch, but you probably don't have too much here about the Aurora Project, which I think you should. So if you wouldn't mind, I would like to try to read to you some of the things that he provided to me. So back in the 1960s, our company began expanding and became involved in the Lakes Project in Phoenix. We also began a new project in Bakersfield, California. Our marketing people suggested we consider Colorado as a likely place to start another project. Through friends of Phil Riley, we heard there was a parcel of land in Aurora owned by Jess Quartz, the Quartz diamond entrepreneur, and a Dr. Deacon, and other prominent Denver people. Using a Denver attorney, namely Tom Grimshaw, and an associate, Jim Nicholson, who became Secretary of Veteran Affairs under George Bush, we concluded negotiations and acquired the property consisting of 1 square mile. At a dinner that Phil and I attended where we'd made the deal, Dr. Deacon became so excited about all the plans that Mission Viejo was going to do that he actually passed out and we had to rush him to the hospital. After the deal was made, Phil instructed me to plan the development. With an assistant, Phil Charleston, and our chief engineer, Frank Fessy, we began planning the project. I'm not sure of the timing, but after several months, we finished the plan and submitted it to the Aurora City Council and Planning Commission. Prior to submitting the plan for consideration and approval, we had prepared a very beautiful slide presentation that told the Mission Viejo Company story, our accomplishments in California. With members of the Council and Planning Commission present, in the mayor's office, we set our projector and slide carousel. When we went to insert the carousel into the projector, it flew all out in Fessy's hands, and it was all over the floor. Phil was always a person who wanted everything to be just right whenever we made a presentation, be it to the Mission Board or Phil Morris companies or any of those groups. So, recognizing the embarrassment of the situation, the mayor said words to the effect of, Phil, why don't you just tell us about your company? He went on to say, Phil, I think this will be the shortest presentation ever made to a city of a project this size and magnitude, and it was. Following the meeting, we spent the next several weeks completing the plan and development guide. The time finally came where Phil Charleston, Frank Fessy, Tom Grimshaw, and I went before the city for final approval. As we sat in the chambers waiting for our time on the agenda, there was an older gentleman who was presenting a rather large subdivision project. His plan was on a small 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, if I recall. And the chairman asked something like, Charlie, what have you got this time? Charlie explained in 20 words what he had in mind. They approved his plan unanimously. Up comes our time to make a presentation, consisting of several 3-foot by 3-foot colored plans, which I think you see here, depicting the residential and commercial areas, recreation facilities, parks, green belts, etc. After a lengthy presentation, we received unanimous approval. I feel sometimes our elaborate plans really changed things for the planning process in Aurora, and he apologizes. So there's more recollections, but I wanted to kind of just point out, so this is from the annexation agreement, and then you also see a rendering that kind of was attached to the annexation agreement, and part of that was plans that included also perhaps making a lake, just as they had done in California, also a commercial area in the center of the neighborhood, which eventually did not happen, and so forth. So one of the things I did want to point out to you is Jim talked about how the bells were made. The bells were made by the Edison Company, and that they had to guarantee a purchase of $75,000 of mission bells. He said things were cheap back then, like $200 each. We wanted an exclusive use of those bells for our Mission Viejo neighborhood, which he said was fabricated by GE South Carolina plant. He worked with a Long Beach, California company to fabricate the arms. We had an exclusive for several years, but soon the city of San Juan Capistrano and Orange County began installing them as well as the new Dana Point Marina. So you can find them actually all over that part of California. All right, so the start of it, when we began production here in Aurora, we had our California people design and merchandise the homes in the community, and we had hired a local construction managers. The time proved, however, that we needed to hire and bring California people over to Colorado on a permanent basis. Managing by phone, we discovered, was not the best thing to do. We were already extending ourselves with the Arizona project and Bakersfield, etc. After discussions with our company president, Phil Riley, Phil approved us bringing in Jeff Loader, one of our chief engineers in California operations, over to head the project. Then Tony Natal entered the picture, and then Pat Farrell, who managed the project for Mission Viejo Aurora, while I helped to do the Highlands Ranch project in 1978. And Pat was the lead man for Aurora. Things went well under his guidance, with continuous input and assistance from our gurus in California, namely Harvey Steen, Bob Lundgren, Marshall McKean, additional California people that were brought in as well. So a little bit of background from Mr. Tupfer, our designer of these communities himself. So when Mission Viejo was opened in September 1972, it was opened in grand fashion by Colorado Governor Love. I don't know how many other neighborhoods are opened by a governor, but Mission Viejo Aurora was. And so the governor came, he dedicated, there's 2 plaques, one for the library and one for the school, which are still there. And then there was a grand celebration, mariachi bands, and from Cherry Creek High School. At the time, there wasn't even a Smoky Hill High School. And this was the model entryway. Just as in California, there were long lines of people all from the metro area that came and wanted to see these new homes from California that were being built in Aurora. All right. So here's some of the designs of the original show homes in the first few filings of Mission Viejo. These are the Granada series of homes and the La Paz series of homes. As I mentioned, they're the same names that were used in California. You can see that they really typically look like those California styling, right? And if you think, gosh, that looks kind of familiar to me, and if you thought, yeah, those are like, looks like Brady Bunch houses, it's, you know, you're not the first person who has thought that a lot of the houses in Mission Viejo, at least the original part, the first part of it, are Brady Bunch houses. And so a lot of these homes and the styling, this California ranch styling, was kind of adapted, or you know, we're talking in a very adaptive way for mass production homes. Cliff May is one of the architects of this style, and I'm not saying that these are Cliff May homes, but he's kind of been an influence on this style. By the way, Brady Bunch House in Orange, California, just passed, I think it was a week ago, passed the hurdle to become a local historic monument. So everything's becoming historic. They also did a couple other series of homes that were not of the California style. These were the Smoky Ridge series of homes. There were actually 3 sets of show homes in Mission Viejo, Aurora, but there was one street that had virtually all of them. And then this was the Willowwood series, which is in the center of the neighborhood. And some of these homes are kind of similar to some of those Northridge homes over in Stony Point. So, and then also the Summit series of homes, which are almost identical to the homes over in the Northridge area as well, the Groves series of homes. So these are the first residents of Mission Viejo, Aurora, Mr. Hardy Hugh Rusts. And I also wanted to show you that, again, extraordinary lengths that they did to try to build community. They created their own newsletter, which showed all the things that were going on in California. But likewise, anything that was going on in Colorado, everybody in California knew what was going on in Colorado. Oftentimes making the front page, but always having a section called the Colorado Country, where they told what was going on in the Colorado Project. The Mission Viejo Homeowners Association continues to use the Mission Viejo Reporter name. This is one of the barbecues that Art Cook was in charge of. He likes to tell the story about how he set this large barbecue up, and it was an opportunity to tell the residents about what they were planning and what they were going to do. And there was a great thunderstorm. He had not been to Colorado much. He didn't know the weather of Colorado and how it could change in the eastern. So he was shocked that this event actually took place and it was successful and everything dried out before it actually happened. But over 85% of the homeowners at the time attended this, and I know Art really remembered it quite well. I'd like to recognize Forrest Dykstra, who's in the audience over here tonight. Of course, one of your folks on the board here for the Highlands Ranch Historical Society. So, of course, he married into the Tepfer family, and his wife had one of the scrapbooks that Jim Tepfer had kept for the Aurora project. And he graciously gave it to me, and I said, I can hold on to this. So I gave it to the Aurora History Museum, who now holds it. But this scrapbook, it really meant, I think, a lot to Jim, all the different events that occurred in our neighborhood. And people don't really know. There were a lot of things that went on in our neighborhood. You know, not only just, famous football, Broncos, but There was a Virginia Slims tennis tournament that was held there. There was the Miller High Life Classic bicycle race that was held all the way through our neighborhood. The AAU, remember AAU back in the days in the 70s before professionals got to be involved in the Olympics. This was kind of the stepping stone of getting in, recognized. We had a big swim meet there. And some other things. So all of that is in this scrapbook, which I've donated. You can actually see it on the back table if you want. I've got some scans of those things, and you can take the QR code and want to look at it yourself. I have to tell you that all the scans I did really fast and easy, quick, and some of the pictures are really dark, and I didn't have any time to touch them up. So, you see a lot of black pictures. That's why. But anyway, hoping that the Aurora History Museum will be able to better preserve it over time. All right, talking about some other characteristics of Mission Viejo, Aurora. These are some of the original entranceways of Mission Viejo, and you can actually see here how similar it is to California. Now, both these signs do not look like this today. The orange and brown have gone away. But you can see the similarities there evident. And this is Hampton and Chambers. Anybody who's ever been over to Aurora and seen this intersection will probably look at this and say, where's the traffic? There's nobody there. There isn't anybody there. And there's not even traffic lights. But this is where the Mission Viejo development first started. And again, if it wasn't for Mission Viejo, Aurora, Pounds Ranch would not be here. Here's some of the some of the shopping centers as it was first developed after a snowstorm, as you can see. There used to be an old historic site on what would be the southwest part of the community that is no longer there. It was this beautiful barn, and the Mission Viejo Company had intended to preserve it, and unfortunately it burned down. But it is the place where the Holy Love Lutheran Church is today. So, some school characteristics. So, Mission Viejo Aurora is in the Cherry Creek School District, and at the center of it is the Mission Viejo Elementary School. It was really a pretty unique elementary school. And of course, when they first built it, there were open classrooms back in those 70s days, right? Which they've changed and modified over the years. But it won many accolades as it was being developed, including this American Association of School Administrators and American Institute of Architects, who awarded it first place in the national competition for excellence in overall design. And the school was also one of the only few year-round schools to operate in Colorado, and as a national year-round school of merit, and the longest running 4-track year-round school in the United States until it switched to a traditional calendar. Our son grew up, and we really enjoyed the year-round school. It was fantastic. We could take vacations when nobody else did, and the continual learning really was fantastic. The school is unique, in fact, that it does have a lot of things that I think are a bit California-esque. Those pads you see in the front, those used to have picnic tables on them. And so the idea was they would encourage a lot of indoor and outdoor learning. So you'd have teachers and students going inside and outside. Again, I don't think, while this was indirectly related to the Mission Viejo Company, I'm sure that they probably thought, oh, this is going to be like California, we're going to do this duplication, not knowing what the weather was really like. But there's a lot of places where they could easily, and sometimes do, continue to use it for indoor and outdoor education purposes. Now I'm going to get to the library. The library, so the Mission Viejo Company said to the city of Aurora, we're going to dedicate and give you land to build a fire station or police station and a library. And as a result of that, you could build this library as long as you operate it for 50 years. So I'll get more into that here. Here's some pictures of the library before it was under construction. And of course, right now, the city of Aurora is celebrating the 50th anniversary of this library. And the building was opened to the public on August 10th, 1975, after it was dedicated by, of course, Governor Love back in '72. It was put to a referendum vote for bond construction, and considerable planning went into the design to ensure that the building would fit well within the neighborhood. It was built and designed by Harold Holding Associates out of Colorado Springs with an extensive list of covenant restrictions and a promise to keep it open for 50 years, as I mentioned. Well, here's some more photos of the groundbreaking of that library. And that's a picture of when it was first opened. And then over there, farther on the, maybe a little bit hard to see, but further over there on the right, that's an interior shot. You can see a lot of orange colors. That's very, very typical of the 70s, of course. And of course, Mission Viejo is celebrating its 50th, as I mentioned. They're doing a fundraising. If you feel so inclined and would like to donate to this cause, they're looking to try to renovate and add some new elements to the library. So they have some really nice swag too. And you can just look that up, and you can donate through the Friends of Aurora Library. Well, as I mentioned, there was a promise to keep it open for 50 years. I was the Mission Viejo president at the time, and the city of Aurora decided to close it. Well, I had been going through some other records of Mission Viejo, and we were working on another issue, which was the right-of-ways, and it wasn't really working very well. And I had noticed this agreement that was signed by the Mission Viejo company that said, you're going to keep this library open for 50 years. And it looked pretty black and white to me. It was extraordinarily black and white. So I had a lot of conversations with the current HOA board. I finally found a pro bono attorney, Mr. Bob Hoban, who specialized in private property rights. And he said, yeah, I'll take this on for you guys. And I was so thankful for that. And so we filed a lot. After we had meetings, several community meetings, we decided to move forward and sue the city, which we did, because of this agreement. And again, this is something I never expected or never even wanted to get involved in, but here it was. And that lawsuit, we had an injunction hearing. Now, because we're the association, we didn't have direct ties to this agreement. But as you know, Mission Viejo Company was absolved and became part of Shea Homes. Shea Homes had some legal rights to this agreement. We went to Shea Homes. They said, yeah, we're not quite interested in helping you directly, but here's what we could do. We could delegate to your association the right to challenge the closing. And so, our attorney said, let's do that. So literally, in court, as president, I had to stand in the shoes of the Mission Viejo Company, fighting to keep the library open. So I had to really know everything I could possible about Mission Viejo as I was being grilled in the courtroom. And so there were a lot of delays, and we didn't actually win completely that injunction because at the time the judge said that she didn't want to overstep the city council's decisions. So things got delayed. We were going to have another court hearing, and that got delayed. We finally had to settle out of court in mediation. Part of the agreement was we had to create our own general improvement district, which I was also a part of. But my good friend Alan Ingalls, who is also on the board, helped to create and manage a friends group who tried very hard to pass this general improvement district, which for our neighborhood, everything you see in green, that passed yes. We wanted that. We wanted to have an actual tax to help fund this library. Everything outside of this orange said no. So unfortunately, we lost that. But the city has kept its agreement ever since. They have not threatened to close it, and we hope it continues to be open for a very, very long time. All right, some other neighborhood characteristics. As I mentioned earlier about some of the green belts and other places, There's over about 5 miles of trails in a 1 mile square area in Mission Viejo that you can be in these green belts and open space areas. It also had some accolades. The Congress of Recreation and Parks had a meeting and they awarded Mission Viejo Aurora as a model recreation and park neighborhood in 1974. And you can see some of the delegates from that meeting that were traveling through and looking at Mission Viejo when it was being built. There's lots of really hidden parks and hidden green belts all throughout Mission Viejo. Some of those ideas, of course, were later copied and mirrored here in Highlands Ranch. And these are some of the parks in Mission Viejo. Some of the largest parks are Los Niños Park, La Parquita Park, where you can play tennis and pickleball, and then the large park at Mission Viejo, where again they had an idea of maybe even building another lake or actually another middle school, but it was all forgiven. They just built a large park instead. And so it was also all these parks were awarded accolades too by the Associated Landscape Contractors of America. This happens to be an old picture of, there was an old community garden that they used to have that after they started building, they got rid of that. We're also, I should mention, for the 150-250, we're going to have a new sculpture in a park dedicated this year. So if you ever get a chance, come check us out. All right. These are some of the recreation photos. Unfortunately, the recreation center is not used as a recreation center anymore. But as I mentioned to you earlier, some of the events that used to take place there. This happens to be, I think it was the world's longest banana split event. And just as in California, they hope to start many kind of community organizations, mostly in the athletic area. One of which happens to be the Mission Aurora Swim Club, now known as the Mission Aurora Conroe Swim Club, which is still in existence today. They have their own place not far from Mission Viejo. They also started what was called the Mission Spartan Club. These were the conquistadors. We had the Nadadores in California. These were the conquistadors. And then the Spartans, which was a lot of like Little League and that kind of thing. They are also still in existence in Aurora as well. These were all facilitated by the Mission Viejo company. And I know that they've done the same here at Highlands Ranch too. Here's the firehouse, and it has a really unique characteristic because it has this really neat Spanish door with a lot of Spanish elements, design elements put into it. Pretty unique. And then these are some of the pictures of the different shopping centers. So there's the shopping center itself. There's really 3 shopping centers in our neighborhood. Mission Viejo Shopping Center, but there's also Quincy Place, and then Mission Plaza, which is a small strip mall of sorts. And then, of course, where we have churches, Holy Love Lutheran Church and the Baptist Church there too. This is one of the parkways. I should also mention there's sub-associations beside the single-family homes. There's the Seville townhomes. These were also built by the Mission Viejo company. Seville is really well-maintained community, has lots of green belts that interspersed throughout it. And then this is the Cherry Glen townhomes. And then Mission Viejo started to do something different. They said, okay, we're tired of building ourselves. And so then they invited other home builders to also build. I think that was a model that they then translated over here to Highlands Ranch. They did the French Creek was not built by Mission Viejo, but it was helped, facilitated by the company. And then the Valencia homes they actually did build, but then there's another area called Quincy Creek where some other home builders built. And then there's the Southlight area that have all these sort of environmental construction homes in it as well, all within our home neighborhood. This is the last cul-de-sac area, and for a long time there was a lot of debate about what was going to go into that area, and they decided to put 4 kind of show homes at the end. And then where you see Marguerite and Alicia, you can only find that in 2 places in the country, right here in Aurora and over in California. The sign has changed a little bit, that's from an earlier picture, but that intersection is still there, of course. And of course, we had our 40th governor, Bill Owens, used to live in our neighborhood. And it was very, if it's at the time, you can go back and look at newspapers, he was criticized a lot because he decided not to live in the governor's mansion because he preferred to live in Mission Viejo in his subdivision home, and was criticized a lot for not making the church with his family downtown. But his home is there. He hasn't lived there for many, many years. But all of which led to the Aurora Historic Preservation Commission to designate Mission Viejo as a cultural heritage site. Now, it is just sort of in recognition only. It's not a landmark. But we recognize that the importance of this community and how it influenced not only this community and Highlands Ranch, but really the whole metro area in terms of how home building and how communities were built and constructed. And it was a model for Highlands Ranch. So, here's some photos of the Highlands Ranch development. This was being built and first designed by Mission Viejo company. And I wanted you to know, if you came and bought your home, one of those first homes in the Northridge area, where did you go to really find out more about the home decorating options? You'd have to come to Aurora. You came to Aurora because that's where they still had all their offices. And another thing I wanted to point out to you is they took great care about how they were going to build this community. And out of a 20,000 acre parcel of land, over 10,000 acres have been preserved in open space, which is an amazing feat, really, to think about. You probably all enjoy the open space areas here in Highlands Ranch as a result of really good planning. And of course, the really big key historic site, and I won't go into great detail about this, but you all know, is the Highlands Ranch Mansion. And it had a whole, of course, a series of owners, including Samuel Long, the original first construction that got built, in stages and added on to over the years. Oil tycoon Wade Phillips and Kessels, the Hughes, of course, Lawrence Phipps Jr. Owned it and then passed away, and then Marvin Davis, the oilman, owned it, bought it, and then he sold it to the Mission Viejo company. And it was owned by them until they dissolved, and then Shea Holmes had owned it for a while. And of course, it's now part of the Highlands Ranch Metro District. And many of you know this property, of course, and of course it was the site of some television filming history for Centennial and the Dynasty soap opera series, of course. And I wanted to mention the Highlands Ranch. So it was Lawrence Phillips who named Highlands Ranch. Highlands Ranch had other names before that. I'm sure many of you probably know that. But this gate archway, which I'm not sure if that's the original one, but I know there was another one that was just like this on County Line Road, and I clearly remember this as a kid seeing it. But that's the Highlands Ranch name. That's where it comes from. It's a wonderful thing. And Mission Viejo, they could have demolished this building. They could have said, forget it, we'll build more homes here. Instead, they did keep this. And of course, we're now talking about the Metro District finally getting the deed to the cattle area, the ranching area as well. So that's all going to be extraordinarily beneficial to this community. All right, so where does all the history start in Highlands Ranch? Of course, we got to mention the Torosaur that was found in the Wind Creek development that was excavated at the M&S, and that particular skull is actually, I think it's still on display. I'm not sure if it still is or not, but it was at the Aurora History Museum for a long time, so it was recently. So anyway, we go back. It goes back 50 million years in the Cretaceous period here in Highlands Ranch. But with people, nearby there's the Lamb Springs site. So this is a pre-contact Native American site. And I wanted to mention it because when it was first acquired, the Mission Viejo, even though this wasn't in Mission Viejo, it's near Sterling Ranch, donated to help preserve this site. So they really respected the history. And people have been living in Highlands Ranch for at least 10,000, 15,000 years in this area. But when the Mission Viejo company started their development, they did another extraordinary thing. Out of due diligence, they hired a archaeological consultant firm to do a survey and recorded many, many sites in Mission Viejo, in Highlands Ranch. And you can see some of those artifacts that we brought back today, so if you take a look at those, lots of indigenous Native American pre-contact sites. And, these are some bad scans, but these are some of the artifacts. And there really are some of the most extraordinary artifacts I've ever seen in Douglas County, indicating really to me that there was really a real effort to really, utilize the land here over, thousands of years. The Mission Viejo company also sponsored excavations at the Cheese Ranch. So hopefully most of you know about the Cheese Ranch. But the Cheese Ranch, unfortunately, was in really bad shape and they had to demolish it. But before they did, they hired a really well-known Colorado, passed away, but former historic archaeologist named Richard Carrillo, who did excavations at that site. So the Cheese Ranch is very famous for having been started by Austrian immigrants who were experts at creating all kinds of great cheeses. And we're also very well known to have really large German beer festivals and things like that, Oktoberfests. So you can also see on our table some of the artifacts from the Cheese Ranch, from this family. It was really a well-known place, very much a social infested place. And they were also well known for their cheese making, really written up in a journal called Scientific Farmer at the time. If you want to go visit, I encourage you to go visit the Cheese Ranch Historic and Natural Area here in Highlands Ranch. So there's a windmill there and then some interpretive signage where you can learn more about the Cheese Ranch. All right, so here are some early brochures and this was the earliest sort of photos I could find when the development first started over in the Northridge area off of Broadway. When it was first developed, as you can see, they had double-decker bus tours taking people to go look at the homes. My family was part of that. You can take a look at the brochures there. The designs of some of these homes, as you can see, the Groves and Stony Point actually kind of are very, very similar, almost exactly in some cases, to those in Mission Viejo, Aurora. So these are the show homes today. This is the Bayfield series of homes, which were totally unique. There's nothing like it in Aurora, but they were over there on East Jackrabbit Place. And then the Stony Point series over on South Briarview. Some of those very, very similar to what you see in the center of Mission Viejo, Aurora. So, are the Willowwood homes. And then these are the Grove series, and they're like 98% similar to the Summit homes over in Gold.
Is that a microphone?
Yeah, here is the Northridge Center. As you can kind of see it, actually, in a lot of ways, sort of looked like the one in Aurora. Of course, it's been modified and expanded many, many times since it was first opened. These are the first residents to come to Highlands Ranch, and I know that the Highlands Ranch Historical Society has honored them. This happens to be Mr. and Mrs. Scott. And you see Mr. Art Cook there giving a
a steer as a reward for buying the first home in Highlands Ranch. And of course, the Highlands Ranch legacy in a lot of ways continues to this day with Shea Homes, still building homes in the Denver area. And then we all should recognize Jim Tepper, who had the vision for all of this and started it in California, went to Aurora, and of course here in Highlands Ranch. And there's a lovely park here at Highlands Ranch dedicated to Jim, and a nice monument to his vision. I encourage you to go check it out. And the Highlands Ranch Historical Society has done a wonderful job at doing oral histories, documenting this legacy, and it's really wonderful. Here we are, 45 years into Highlands Ranch. Highlands Ranch is nearly historic. When it reaches 50, we all say, as historians and archaeologists, it's already historic. So finally, we'll talk about social characteristics. This is a bit cliche, but really it's the people, right? It's the people who live in these communities that really make the difference and have made the difference and have been so community-minded. These were some events that happened in Aurora, but I know you can say the same here for Highlands Ranch. It's community, it's resiliency, it's, all because I think a lot of the good planning that went on in all of these areas. If you'd like to take a virtual tour, a couple of years ago for the city of Aurora, I did a little, it's called a story map of our neighborhood. I encourage you, if you'd like, to take the QR code. I've got some on the back table over there. You can actually do the little tour from the comfort of your home, or even better yet, we all would love to come to Aurora and come visit all the different kind of hidden places in Mission Viejo. And it's narrated as well. There's a link. I don't know if we can get it to work, but if you wanted to see what it looked like. We're trying. Not sure if it'll work. That's okay. I'll go past it. It's okay. All right. And then, as I mentioned, Forest Extras donating the Jim's scrapbook. And take a look at that. I have a QR code that you can also download and take a look at that in a couple different formats in PowerPoint and PDF as well, if you're so interested. Those are the QR codes for those. So, and this is a thank you to, of course, all the people I've ever met and talked to and worked with for the Mission Viejo Company, including a lot of people who have, of course, passed, like our cook here in California gave us a really wonderful tour many years ago. I got to introduce to some of the folks in California. That's my family. They don't look like that anymore. They've all grown up. But we had a great time, and what a great group of folks. And then I'd like to thank some of the other people, of course, Jim Tepfer, who had this vision for these communities. I'd also like to thank the Aurora History Museum for all that they've done in supporting what we do, and with the Aurora Historic Preservation Commission. And my work as a consultant and doing all the work for Douglas County, I couldn't be happier and so thrilled to work with connections that I have, deep connections also in Douglas County. So thank you very much for having me and letting me present this for you. I hope that you come away with this seeing that the origins of Highlands Ranch really start in California, but also Aurora, and that these are planned communities of unique characteristics. Here's to many, many more years, I hope. If you have questions, I'll be available with Brittany